Hello, and welcome back to I'll Watch What They're Watching, where we're curious and adamant about cinema. I am one of your hosts. I'm Kyrie.
And I'm Adam.
So today we're doing another Arts and Charts, but it's a little different. We've been wanting to do The Matrix for a hot minute, and I said, hey, I think we should do it with Ghost in the Shell, because I love Ghost in the Shell, and because I had read that the Wachowskis had taken a lot of inspiration from Ghost in the Shell. And then, Adam, you came in and you were like, well, hold up. We got to do I Saw the TV Glow, because you love that one. I had never seen it. You thought I'd really like it. So we kind of went back and forth, like, Ghost in the Shell, TV Glow, which one do we do? And then we finally were like, I mean, it's our podcast. We can make the rules and we can do whatever we want. So we're doing an arts versus charts, where we're going to be talking about both. We're going to be talking about I Saw the TV Glow and kind of how it relates to The Matrix and how that relates to Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah, we can do whatever we want, and no one can tell us any different. This is our show. We do what we want. No, this was kind of a fun discussion beforehand, and as we go on, I think we've been trying to find something for I Saw the TV Glow, because it's been something. Again, I really like the movie, and Kyrie hadn't seen it, so we were trying to find something that would work in this format for this episode. And then I had an epiphany, and I was like, wait a minute, this is totally applies to The Matrix, and I don't think you would disagree. And I even pulled some quotes from the director, who has some direct references and interviews where they talk about The Matrix. So it's going to be exciting. Everyone knows The Matrix, and I think these other two arts picks will allow us to talk about some of the themes and things that are going on, that you then look back at The Matrix and you're like, oh yeah, all that stuff is kind of there too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Both I Saw the TV Glow and Ghost in the Shell, regardless of if you liked it or not, both have a lot to talk about. And because, yeah, Matrix is kind of a crowd pleaser. I don't know if I know anyone who just flat out don't like The Matrix.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So I think that's, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of the fun thing here, is that I Saw the TV Glow and Ghost in the Shell people might not know as much about, but I do think there's a lot to talk about. And kind of coupling it with The Matrix, which is so well loved, I think is going to be a good time. All right. So for I Saw the TV Glow, there are going to be, as always with the Arts and Charts, there's going to be spoilers. However, with that being said, we're going to try to keep them a little less, because I don't want to ruin I Saw the TV Glow for anyone. But yeah, we'll try to, I mean, we're going to have to get into some nitty gritty, and we're going to really dive into it and talk about it. But we can kind of keep things a little bit obscure. But I would recommend, if, you hear us talk about it and it sounds like something you'd enjoy, I'd recommend going and watching it first. I think Ghost in the Shell is obscure enough on its own that we're going to be fine.
It doesn't matter what we say about Ghost in the Shell. You're still going to have no idea what's going on if you've never had any experience with it before.
That's not true.
I know. I'm kidding.
But it is quite a bit more obscure, whereas, like, I Saw the TV Glow. I mean, I Saw the TV Glow has some obscurity with it as well, but TV Glow also has, like, a very specific twist, almost.
Yeah.
That we will be kind of getting into. That being said, if you've heard any of the discourse around this movie, you already kind of have an idea.
Right. I Saw the TV Glow is a much kind of more straightforward plot-wise and things. But let's get into it. I'll give a quick overview. So I Saw the TV Glow, written and directed by Jane Schoenbrunn. This is their second movie, I believe. So it's starring Justice Smith, for if you know him from Dungeons and Dragons or Detective Pikachu. He is in both of those. And then Jack Haven, who is the co-lead or supporting person next to them. And then this one just makes me laugh every time I see him. The first time I saw him, I was like, what is he doing here? It's Connor O'Malley, he's a comedian, but I know him primarily for his work with Tim Robinson and I Think You Should Leave, Detroiters, Friendship. Basically anywhere Tim Robinson is going to show up, Connor O'Malley is going to show up at some point, and is just he's just so funny. And so I think him being in there was just, I listened to an interview with Jane Schoenbrunn, and the interviewer was like, how did Connor O'Malley get in this? Basically, kind of the same thing of like, why is he here? This is weird. And Jane was like, no, he played it perfectly. He's the exact kind of person to be this just, character of this sort of boss that, yeah, it's wild. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
the other notable person in this is Fred Durst, who is the dad in the movie, who apparently is the frontman for Limp Bizkit, the band. He's doing a bunch of acting as well too, so that's fun. Anyways, I saw the TV glow. I tried describing it to Kyrie a little bit before they watched it, and it's kind of a hard thing to describe the tone or the themes. I think it's sometimes classified as horror and sometimes mystery, and I think those play into it. It's almost like a coming of age with horror. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say the horror doesn't really click in into the last like 10, 20 minutes. IMDb also classifies it as a psychological drama, and I think that's closer.
Oh, sure. That
I think
makes
it's
sense.
kind of a cerebral drama with like, there's a lot of feelings of like anticipation and dread, but I wouldn't say the horror really clicks in until, that final act.
The one way I disagree is it shows like Monsters of the Week from a TV show. And so I think that's a little bit of how some of those horror elements come into, but nothing that you would watch
Yeah.
and be like scared about. You're just like, oh, what in the world am I watching? This is weird.
Yeah, yeah.
So, anyways, this movie follows Owen, starts with him as a seventh grader and kind of follows him throughout his life. And Owen is just this very shy, disconnected boy that you can tell just isn't comfortable in his own skin. And he is watching TV one day and he sees a preview for this TV show called The Pinko Pake. Now, The Pinko Pake is your typical late 90s, comes on Nick at Night or the CW. Adult Swim. It's one of those shows that's like Charmed. Have you ever seen Charmed?
It reminded me of Buffy the Vampire Slayer a lot.
Yes, and Jane talks about Buffy the Vampire a lot. It reminds me of Charmed. I've never seen Charmed except for every day at the gym because it's always on TNT at 6 a.m. in the morning for whatever reason. So he watches that and he like without watching it kind of becomes obsessed of wanting to watch it. He meets this girl at school named Maddie, who's played by Jack Haven, and she is reading a like TV guide or book of the Pinko Pake. And so he shyly asks her about it, and then she ends up inviting him over. And so he goes over, becomes obsessed with the show, becomes friends with Maddie. Eventually, time passes a couple of years, and Maddie makes him VHSs of all the episodes, and he's very obsessed. And they talk a little bit, but he's still very shy and uncomfortable in his skin. And then eventually, Maddie says, "Run away with me," and he just kind of has a freak out and doesn't do it. But then Maddie leaves.
Be clear, this isn't like a romantic run away with me. This is
no.
This town is hell. Neither of us belong. I'm planning on leaving. You should come with me.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. And so then time passes. You can still kind of see he's just kind of never really figured out who he is and kind of still feels stuck in that body. He's shopping at the grocery store and Maddie's there, talks to him, and I won't get too much into the plot because that enters big spoilers territories. But basically, Maddie tells him, "Hey, this isn't real life. You are a character from the Pinko Pake, and you've been trapped here." And so then it's kind of this grappling of can he escape and et cetera, et cetera. I was thinking about this a little bit last night, where many of the popular directors or the most well-known directors, your Scorsese, your Spielberg, your Christopher Nolan, all these different guys, and you look at them and you're like, you're all kind of the same demographic as far as life experience and age and gender and white and So you get a lot of, you sometimes don't get some of the different things that you would see from everyday experiences. And I think what's so unique about I Saw the TV Glow is Jane Schoenbrunn is in their 30s
Yeah,
and is
they're young.
trans, young, is trans, grew up in, the 90s. And so you get this very, very distinct feel of this movie that I think is very unique. It's very, you can like feel just this different energy with this movie. It feels very indie, feels very A24. I think a very
Hmm.
good
Hmm.
comparison is Donnie Darko, but
Yeah,
with again kind of this really stylized sort of direction coming from the director. So it's again a very unique movie. It's not one that I would recommend to everybody. I don't know that everyone would
same.
appreciate it, but I do think where I would move towards recommending it to people is again that point about the directors is this is a very unique perspective on things that
Totally
I think
agree.
helps anybody to expand what other people think about certain topics. And yeah.
Yeah, and you liked it much more than I did, and
Hmm.
I'll have some critiques that will go in at the end, but I don't wanna pee in your Cheerios. So I do want to kind of get into. There were some things I really liked, and I kind of want to let you just rant about it a little bit and really talk about it. And then I'll mention at the end a few things that didn't work for me, and then we can go into Matrix. But one thing I do kind of want to dive into first, because I found this the most compelling part of the film, was like almost like the digital commentary and the idea of nostalgia in the evolution of like the digital age. Because they, again, you sent me an interview with Jane. So I listened to it, and they mentioned, how Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a big kind of inspiration for the Pink Opaque and for them kind of recognizing some of their identity. And I am also quite a big Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan. I really love season 2 and 3. Yeah, I just think Buffy is a great show. So right off the bat, even the font at the beginning of the Pink Opaque for the credits, I was like, that's the Buffy font. I see what you did. But I feel like it has a lot to say about like nostalgia. Millennials, I feel like in particular, are big, almost like nostalgia junkies. Where like we had a freaking Power Rangers movie come out a handful of years ago, because like we're kind of nostalgia junkies. Like we love that crap. And I think it makes an interesting point of like nostalgia, while at times can feel like a warm hug, it has almost the potential to become like a hellscape.
Yeah, that's a really it it's a really distinct take that I don't think we see very often. I'm okay spoiling this part of the movie, but basically later in the movie, Owen is like, "Oh, the Pink Opaque is streaming, and I turned on my favorite show. I wanted to see how it was." I really love the way that this is portrayed, but it shows like an episode that you saw earlier in the show, and it is
Yes.
totally different. It's totally like just these kids running around in this like villain in a suit that's just like, oh, you kids. And it's just this. And so Owen's watching it and he's like, oh, this is not what I remember. This doesn't really work. And so I think just it's an interesting thought process of thinking about the time period when you connected with something or when you watched something when you were a kid, and just the innocence
Mm-hmm.
of loving something, the innocence of being so intrigued by something that you're experiencing, and then having all this life experience that molds you and creates you in a different way, and then you go back and you look at something and it's different. It doesn't feel right. And so I think even to the extent that, obviously I sent you that interview by Jane, but they talk about how culture in general sometimes feels so stunted today because when you aren't progressing sort of the ideas and the culture and the content and the art, and you're just relying on what's been done before or what you did when you were a kid, you kind of feel this stunting of just not moving forward. And so I think that this movie plays with that idea a lot in ways that are quite unique.
Yeah, well, and you kind of messaged me about this too, and I thought this was really interesting when you texted me this. You and I, and we talked about this a little bit in the podcast, but you and I have left the religion that we grew up in, which was a high demand religion. It ends up impacting really every part of daily life, just because there's a code of conduct, there's a code of what you eat, how you interact, and you kind of mentioned that too. Like there's almost a nostalgia with that, where now with all of our life experiences, we've gone, okay, hey, this isn't for me. But like when you sent me that text, I even started thinking about like experiences I had as a kid. And I was like, yeah, there were parts of church that I really loved. And there are aspects of the doctrine and the rules that I really was enchanted by as a younger person. And I don't know if I would still feel that way now. Because there's no way to like go back and revisit our past, so to speak. But yeah, I think that is an interesting application to it, that we can sometimes become enchanted by something in our youth, and then as we get older and have that life experience, we become very like almost disenfranchised by it. We're like, okay, well, this isn't something I need, or this isn't helpful.
You can kind of see how this is tying into the Matrix, right? If Neo has all these experiences and has this whole life, and then someone walks in one day and says, hey, this isn't real. This isn't real life. And so, and I saw the TV glow, there's a point when he's reckoning with this, and he's like, I love, these parts of my life, and I have these memories, and I feel this connection. I can't leave that behind. Like that is so much a part of me. And so you can really see that struggle of, walking out to experiencing or understanding his true self. And at a certain point, you have to kind of understand who you are and move forward with it. And it takes a lot of work and effort to understand and put that context in a way that makes sense. So we'll get more into some of those conversations, obviously. I love a lot of the visuals of this movie. In the scene where it's showing Maddie giving all these VHS tapes to Owen of the different episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's showing Owen, cameras following him, and he's just walking through the school hallway. And there's a bunch of pink text on the screen that is showing like season 3, episode 4, whatever the title is, and it'll show pictures and stuff like that while some music is playing. And I could watch that scene over and over and over again. I really like how it's done.
Yeah, the visuals were a little hit or miss for me, but that scene is pretty incredible, and it does a really good job of painting almost this like sickly glow that comes from screens. And even when the TV is off, and he's at one point he stays over at Maddie's house, and there's a fish tank kind of next to him. It's managing to emanate kind of an eerie green glow that is similar to kind of the glow coming off of screens. And you see that back in the 90s when he's experiencing all those things, and then you see it when he starts working in like an arcade and in a movie theater. And so that the idea of screens and that, again, like I said, almost sickly lighting is present throughout the film, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of plays into like that feeling of dread, because the whole time you're like, something's off, something's not right, something is sick. And then you can definitely see that more and more as the film progresses. Yeah.
So we would be probably remiss if we did not mention this movie is about being transgender. Obviously,
there's a trans allegory throughout it.
Yeah, so obviously the director is trans. I pulled this from an interview that they did. It says trans experience is something that's classically represented by Hollywood as this very external force, when actually it is so internal. This feeling that the world is not quite right, and that is kind of, in their perspective, a much more accurate way to describe what it feels like to be trans. It's not so much I looked in the mirror and wanted beautiful lashes and locks, but things just don't feel right. And so I think again, that's a it's depicted very well in that aspect of it. And I think we can get a little bit into some of the critiques or issues that you have. But part of the interview that I shared with Kyrie for anyone listening, Jane talks about when they wrote this movie and how it was very, very soon after they started transitioning. That again, they talk about they're in their mid 30s right now. They wrote this when they were like 30, began production when they were 31, came out when they were 32, something along those lines. And now they kind of look back and they're like, that was when I just started and I feel like I was a child. Yeah. I'm this new person now. I have this, as we've been talking about, this new context on the world. And a lot of those things that I was writing about, I was a child. And now I feel like I'm a teenager. And so just like how in real life you progress your thoughts and ideas, they feel the same way. And so I think this movie is very much from a trans perspective, which I don't have, obviously. But from a trans perspective, it's very kind of black and white in the messaging about what that is. And it feels very, it's very in your face, not in a bad way, but very like confrontational with the direct ideas.
Yes.
At the end, you're just sitting there like, oh my gosh, that is a gut punch. Like that is just, wow.
Yeah, and I mean, we can get into this now. And I did appreciate that you sent me that interview because I did feel like it gave me some perspective because it finished and I didn't love it. I have come on it a little bit more as I've kind of sat with it for, a handful of days. But right off the cuff, I was like, I do not like this movie.
Yeah.
Because I texted you when I was like, this is too on the nose. But then I talked with a bunch of other friends and they're like, baffles them that no one can decide if this movie is too obscure or too explicit in its messaging. Because for me, I went into it being like, yeah, this is a trans allegory. It's pretty obvious. And a lot of other people don't feel that way. I had people who, again, some of my film buddies who were like, no, I went in not knowing that there was any trans allegory. And I just took it to be a message about authenticity. And, there's some writing that crops up a message, there is still time or something like that.
Yeah.
And they were like, I actually find that a really hopeful message. Like there is still time. Whereas I looked at that and I was like, well, that sucks because eventually time's going to run out. So yeah, I like what you said about how it being pretty confrontational because I came onto this movie. I know we were comparing it to The Matrix, but I think in my head I was comparing it to Ghost in the Shell. Mm-hmm. And we'll get a little bit into Ghost in the Shell in a minute, but that movie I don't feel like is overly interested in answering some of the questions that it presents, and I feel like it's sharing its opinion on things, but it's not forcing the viewer to share those opinions and those thoughts. It's interested in a discussion, and I Saw the TV Glow is very direct in telling me what I should feel and think about this, and I don't like that. I don't like, and movies just do that sometimes, and sometimes I'm okay with it, but because I am a queer person, and so I know what coming out is like, and it's terrifying, and it's, in some ways it's great, in some ways it's awful, and as a queer person you never really get to stop coming out, because if you get a new job, all of a sudden you have a new boss that you have to talk about it with. And if you meet new friends and like you never get to stop coming out. And I have seen so many things in my life about coming out where it's like it's such a personal decision. And for some people, it's not safe to come out yet. Some people never want to come out. Some people, might come out and then tiptoe back in the closet. And the whole idea behind all of these various ways of coming out is there's no wrong way to come out. There's no wrong time to come out. And if you never come out, that's okay too. That doesn't make you a bad person. That doesn't make you some sort of traitor of the queer community. Like, it is just so individual. Because I kind of told you, I was like, here's the crux of, I think, what's bothering me. And I am not exaggerating this. This is not symbolic. This is exactly what it's like. The messaging in this was, coming out is good, staying closeted is bad, and if you stay closeted, eventually you will wither and die. And again, that's not me being facetious. That is the message. You literally see the character decaying in front of our eyes. So for me, again, I understand a little bit more having listened to Jane's interview where, they were a baby trans, and so they're coming into this with that kind of lens of like, I just came out, my egg just cracked, holy crap, my whole life is changing, what do I do? And I can see this being a very, very empowering message for some people. I found the message potentially really damaging, and that this is just me, but like I have very close friends who are closeted trans people who don't feel safe to come out, who don't feel like they can tell their family, who are still figuring it out too, as well, with gender fluidity and with their trans experience. And I feel like the idea that someone has to come out again with such aggressive messaging is like, and if you don't come out, you will die. I don't think that's helpful for some people, is my personal complaint.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm really grateful you have that perspective. Like some other episodes where I'm like, oh yeah, I never even thought about that with my sort of heteronormative views on many things. But I think for me, it was a powerful message and perspective of just trying to understand a little bit about how people feel. I think too, I can relate in the way of, you mentioned earlier, leaving our religion. And I think when that first happens, there's this sort of sense of anger or frustration about how you have lived your life. And you look back, like we talked about, those memories and the recontextualization of some of those, and you're frustrated about it. And so you want to go kind of scorched earth and be like, you're wrong, you need to do this. And so I can understand that feeling of making such a monumental decision that changes their entire life and being like, hey, this is a good thing. Everybody needs to do this that's feeling this way. Otherwise, you're going to be stunted forever. I don't think Jane disagrees with what you've talked about based on the way that they've understood experience and grown over time. And again, you talked about it a little bit, but I do think that they very deliberately put in that message. There's still time. It's not the very end of the movie, because the very end of the movie, they want to come across again in this horror existential dread. But close to the end of the movie, they do put that there is still time. And I think that's very deliberate of the messaging there as well. But no, so I think I can understand that. And I think it's a valid criticism from you. And I think that's where some of those feelings come from, I would assume from Jane's perspective. I'm not going to speak for Jane or say, but from what we've listened to and read, I think that's kind of where it sits a little bit.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to, for people who found this incredibly beautiful and empowering, I don't want to invalidate that experience in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's something I've been coming around to lately, because if I don't like a movie, I like to let everyone know how much I don't like it and why they shouldn't like it too. And I'm coming around to like this idea that like, hey, if you liked a movie, that's not a bad thing. And that's kind of where I'm sitting with this, is I'm like, people who like it, that's great. I love that this gave some people an outlet. I love that this gave some people some representation to kind of hang on to. And I do think if you take the messaging a little different, like I said, I had a friend who was like, oh, I took this as, if you can't be your authentic self, that is going to affect your overall happiness. And I'm like, I can get on board with that a little more. Like, if you're constantly having to shove parts of yourself down, that is going to affect like your well-being over time. Like I said, I have some very near and dear friends who are closeted trans people, and that was running through my mind the entire time.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing all that. Last thing I'll say on this movie, there's a great line in it when Maddie and Owen are teenagers and they're sitting on the bleachers, and Owen says something about, you want to watch Pinko Pick again? And Maddie's like, I like girls, right? And Owen's like kind of surprised, like caught off guard. And Maddie's like, well, what do you like? And Owen says, I like TV shows. And I think that's just, it's sad. It's just, wholesome a little bit, but it's just again, I think this movie does a really good job of capturing some very specific feelings and a very specific tone.
Yeah.
But it's very unique, very stylized, very direct.
But anyway, we can move on to The Matrix.
Yeah.
Star rating for
Yeah,
I Saw the TV.
when I first saw this, I gave it a 4 out of 5. On a rewatch, I gave it a 4.5. So I do really like this movie. I really like the style of it. I like the music. I like the visual language that is being spoken to me. Not perfect, but I think it opens up some discussion and helps me see a perspective that I don't see very often. So yeah, 4.5 is a good place for me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I've settled on it a little bit more. I'm thinking I'm hovering right around 3, maybe 2.5.
Yeah, that's
Probably
good.
a 3. There were things that I really liked that it did, like really, really liked. There were things I didn't, but there were some things I quite enjoyed. And so, yeah, I would say 3. I didn't necessarily love the movie as a whole, but I really liked some of the things it did.
Great. Well, on to The Matrix. Now, I'm sure there's some people that listen to this that haven't seen The Matrix, but I would assume most people have seen The Matrix. So I think we can be a little bit more brief on our conversation here.
Yeah. Well, and very, very brief overview. This guy named Neo is, blue collar worker by day, hacker by night, basically. He stumbles onto this path, ends up realizing that the world that we think is the real world is not, and humans are being used as living batteries by these machines in the actual real world, and they're put into this virtual reality called the Matrix, which is the world that we see around us. And so the rest of the movie is basically, Neo, the freedom fighters think that he's the one who's going to, save them. And yeah, the movie is just various events of Neo kind of realizing his destiny and maybe making a step or two in the right direction of ending the aliens or machines' control over humans.
Yeah, I really did not remember rewatching this. I did not remember how much of a Neo, you are the one. I was like, oh wow, they're really going for that. I didn't remember that part of it.
Yeah, they really, really lean into that. Which I don't know. The whole the one mentality is, I think, a little overwrought at this point.
I agree, but not gonna lie, it is straight fire when he realizes his full potential and he's
for sure
dodging bullets and all this stuff. This is one of the most significant scenes in cinema history. Is how incredible for the time and the impact, and everyone knows what I'm talking about when Neo is dodging these bullets, and it holds up. It's very stylized in the action, but it's in a way that you're still like, nah, man, this is awesome.
This is cool, yeah. And I mean, they actually had a kung fu master training these people, and the kung fu master, he was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I want a lot of money. And the Wachowskis basically like, we don't have that money to give you. And he was like, okay, then if I'm going to do this, I need to have basically complete control over the fight scenes. I need to be training these people months in advance. This is exactly how it's going to play out. This is sort of the training and intensity that they're going to go through for these scenes. And the Wachowskis were basically like, okay, cool, great, full send. So the fight scenes are fire because it's choreographed and these people are trained by someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Agent Smith is such a good villain.
Yeah.
I heard one time, because the line that he says all the way through that's so good, his Mr. Anderson. I read somewhere or heard something sometime where people were like, what's great and almost kind of chilling is he is basically an employee who is bored. He is a bad employee who is bored by his job. So whenever he says that, it doesn't even sound it sounds kind of threatening, but it's very a bored employee who's just like, oh, good, you're back. We got to figure out what to do with you.
Yeah.
Which I think is great. He's almost comedic.
Yeah. I'm actually going to pull a quote now from Jane Schoenbrunn, rewinding back to I Saw the TV Glow, that
Right.
talks specifically about that, and then also kind of opens up a little bit more about the themes that we can get into. So they say
Yes.
the Matrix is very in conversation with trans themes that my work is also interested in. This feeling of unreality that can be a potent metaphor for being trans in the world or figuring out that you're trans. They continue, Agent Smith is a boring dude in a suit who realizes that he is the system and that every other person is in somebody that he can subsume and become. And he's frustrated by this. Gaining this kind of sentience could be an interesting story to explore. And so
Right.
I just thought that was great as we were getting ready for this. And I'm like, see, there's a direct relationship between these two movies that we can talk about. But
so I mean, I think that brings me to my first question. What specifically, because you said, you want to do TV Glow with The Matrix, what were parallels that you personally saw between these two movies?
Right. So there's obviously big reveals in both of these movies that what you're watching in the world around you is not real life. And so I think that, from a real world perspective, do I think that we are in the Matrix? No, not particularly. But I think that this idea of are you understanding the world around you and the things that you're told about the world that you live in, and is that all real? Is that something that if you took a pill you would understand differently or recontextualize? So I think that's the big one there. But obviously I saw the TV Glow is very direct in its trans allegory, and The Matrix, I think, has a lot of the same ideas in it, a lot of the same kind of coming to terms with your own body and what really is your body. And I don't know a lot of the details, but I think you probably do. But can you talk a little bit about the directors of The Matrix and kind of their trans experience?
Yeah, I don't know a ton, but I do know, the Wachowskis, at the time The Matrix came out, they were known as the Wachowski brothers. One of them transitioned first and then the other shortly after, and so now they are the Wachowski sisters. It's really interesting. They did another movie that I actually prefer over The Matrix called Bound, and it's a very 90s lesbian, like crime mob theft. It's fantastic. It's really fantastic. And it's really interesting watching it as like, oh, this was made by trans women.
Mm-hmm.
This is not, not a completely, male gaze driven film. And you see elements of that a little bit in The Matrix. The character of Switch, the blonde, the original idea for Switch was they would be one gender in The Matrix and a different one in the real world.
Oh, that would have been cool.
Right? So that was one of the original ideas for Switch. I don't know why it got scrapped. I don't know if studio intervened or if they just decided to take it a different direction. But that was the original plan, was to kind of show this is who someone really is, but in The Matrix, this is how they're presenting. So the Wachowskis, I don't entirely know their whole coming out experience and what that was like, but it is interesting going back and watching them and seeing, oh, this isn't made by two men. This is made by two trans women.
Yeah.
It has a very different messaging. Well, we talked about this and you mentioned like being trapped in a digital, like non-reality. That's very apparent. Like you can see the message the Wachowskis are portraying in that idea of this thing that you've become accustomed to, that you've become comfortable with, isn't the reality, that maybe isn't something that is even real, and it's probably not the reality you want.
Yeah, there's two things that I think I wanna tag on to with that comment. Number one, going back to our episode where we talked about The Little Mermaid, and I was like, The Little Mermaid isn't about anything, and you were like, hey, as a queer kid, this had a big impact on me of understanding some of these different things and wanting something that doesn't feel attainable, or that I wish I could be in this other area, and it's there's obstacles in the way to get there. I think The Matrix is similar in that way, that a lot of people watch this, me included, and I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. This is so cool.
Yeah.
And I could see someone that watches this and like, wow, this is me. This is how I feel in my own body right now, that this isn't real. This isn't what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
My brother and I were talking, because I've mentioned before my brother's an animator, so he and I talk about movies and story and different things like that. And he brought something up because he and I were kind of comparing and contrasting two Netflix films that came out, Nimona, which is fine, and K-pop Demon Hunters, which I really dug. Well, I said this sentence, and this is kind of how I feel in a nutshell. Sometimes I think studios are so concerned about sharing messages that they forget to tell a good story.
Sure.
And for me, I think the best stories are ones that are almost like universal, in the sense that, like, you can watch The Matrix and take what you want from it. You can go into The Matrix and just get, a kick-ass action movie. You can go into The Matrix and see a philosophical discussion. You can go into The Matrix and see trans themes. You could go into The Matrix and see messages about identity crises, about work burnout. So I feel like there's so many things you can take from it. And again, I don't feel like The Matrix is forcing you to find a certain allegory or certain through line for it. It is presenting this story. It is presenting this film for our enjoyment. And we will take what we want out of it. Because I really dig The Matrix. And I think every time I can approach it a little differently. But I think that's the thing. The movies that are the most successful, the movies that I tend to really love, are ones that I'm like, just tell me a good story. Let me decide how I want to feel about it. I don't know. I'm a little torn, because on the one hand, I do think representation is important, but like, the movies that I love best that have the representation, either the feminine representation that I want or the queer representation that I want, can be universally enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I feel that way with The Matrix.
Yeah. 100 million, 1,000% agree. This movie's great.
Yeah, I mean, we'll move on, because I really, really do want to get into Ghost in the Shell, because I love it.
What's your star rating on The Matrix? Yeah.
Yeah, 4 stars for me.
I think I'm in that range, 4.5. Like, it's so good. It's a classic. It's
yeah.
I could, on the right day, I could probably even give it a 5, but I save my 5s for pretty close to the heart. So I'd probably lean more towards the 4.5, 4 range, but it's just so good. And
yeah.
So anyways.
All right. Should we dive into Ghost in the Shell?
Absolutely. I know this will be the part where you gush about it. So I'll let you go through, and I'll jump in as I do. I
wrote at the top of my notes, I said, what works? Everything. Yeah, brief overview. This movie stars character named Major Motoko Kusanagi, and she is a part of Section 9, which is kind of a cop-esque group. It's in the far future. Lots of technological advances, very digital age, and bodies and body parts now can be mass manufactured. So a lot of people have parts or their entire body, which is made. But they all retain their humanity. They call it a ghost, and it's like a human consciousness. So the movie is literally about a ghost, a human consciousness in a shell in this manufactured body. And so, yeah, they're trying to track down a hacker named the Puppet Master. There's some intrigue. There's various things happening, but it kind of ends with, Kusanagi really wants to dive into this Puppet Master and figure out who this person is, what he's about, how he came into being, because she has kind of been struggling with this idea of, is she still human? Is there really a ghost? Is there really a human consciousness in this shell? And is it her own human consciousness? Or has it been hacked? Have these memories been implanted? Is she real? Is she human? So that's a lot of the messaging throughout it. It ends with, I'm not even going to say how it ends, because I want people to see this movie, but that's a lot of what's going through it. So I said, question for Adam. What questions do you have about this movie? Because I know you were a little confused.
I'll say going into this blind is... I like to go in blind with most movies. I would recommend not going in blind with this movie, because there's a lot going on. I described it to you in 2 ways, and I did watch it a second time the next day, And I was like, oh yeah, this is a good movie. I get it. But it's basically there's so much going on in the world building, but it doesn't give you time to understand that. It just goes like the plot just goes, and you have to. So listen. You
I'm
have
listening.
to you have to do both things simultaneously of like you're understanding what this world is and the plot at the same time, and that was too much for my small brain. All I could do, I thought I
All
feel like I
right.
got a good understanding of the world, but then I was like, what's going on? What are they, who are, I didn't know who was on the same team. I didn't know who
Mm,
was
mm,
chasing who. I didn't know why they were
mm.
chasing anybody. There's this like foreign influence too, and I was like, are
Yeah.
they, because in the beginning, this isn't a spoiler because it happens like first thing. In the beginning, the
Yeah.
main character assassinates somebody. So I'm like, oh, are they bad guys? But no, they're the police. And so it's like, what's going on there? So it's hard to keep track in my mind to try and build the world in your brain while following the plot.
Did it did it make more sense when you watched it with subtitles?
Well, that's a hard question to answer. The answer is yes, but I was literally watching it for the
You're
second
always watching it.
time, so I don't know that
Yeah.
I can attribute it to it being subbed, but
Because I had a friend who was not as enamored with this movie as I was, and they were like, well, I watched it dubbed, so maybe there wouldn't voice acting. And I was like, that is not how you watch this movie! Because, like, there are things they explain better when it's subtitled. You get more of the emotional inflection, which is better. Even from the very beginning, they're talking to Kusanagi, like, over the mental comm link, and, they're like, is something wrong, blah, 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 and she goes, oh, maybe it's my time of the month. The reason that is, like, funny and also kind of, like, dark and poignant is because her body is manufactured. She doesn't have a time of the month. Right off the bat, like, within the first few minutes, that is her basically saying, this innate thing that is kind of like an innate, stereotypically feminine experience is not something I experience.
yeah.
So right off the bat, within the first, like, 5 minutes, she is already making commentary of, I don't know if I'm real. I don't know if my human consciousness is enough to qualify me as a human because I don't experience the basic biological functions. Right off the bat, the dub doesn't have that line. And I think that line is important in just establishing the baseline of who Kusanagi is. Anyway,
Right.
I do want to talk about the technical stuff, but I also want to talk a little bit more about, like, kind of the symbolism and philosophy, if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So when she's fighting that tank at the end and it's shooting it, do you know that thing that it, like, shoots up, the tree-looking thing? Do you know what that is?
No.
That's the Tree of Life.
Okay.
So that is a symbolic version of the Tree of Life, which I think it's crazy when, and this is delving in spoiler territory, when Kusanagi and the Puppet Master talk and they decide to merge, they are literally at the base of, there's one shot where it shows the Tree of Life and they are literally, like, in the roots of the Tree of Life. They're at the base of the Tree of Life. Because I've had people talk about them merging and, like, oh, did they mate? And they're like, well, they didn't, I've heard people say they didn't quite mate, like, they just merged. I'm like, I think it's a perfect symbolism for they made it. They created something that is a combination of both of them, but is also uniquely its own thing. And I think that's what childbirth is. And there are so many elements and symbols of womanhood throughout this film. Water is a big one. So, like, you see the opening, credit sequence, the title sequence, when you see Kusanagi's body being created. Like, it's a lot of it's done in water, which, again, like, water is a symbolism for feminine divine. It's the idea of, like, birth. Birth happens in this liquid fluid environment. The whole idea throughout it is this idea of, like, it starts off with, like, creation, birth, baptism, and then you have this Tree of Life image. And again, I'm getting, like, a little biblical here, but, like, this idea of, Adam and Eve, Kusanagi and the Puppet Master merging and creating something that is uniquely different and approaching that, because at the end Kusanagi is like, the net is infinitely vast. And it's almost this idea of like, I'm so excited, where do I start?
Yeah.
Like ideas of the creation is like, and we don't have to get super into religious, but like they leave the Garden of Eden. It's like this idea of like, we have this big, vast, beautiful world. Where do I even start? I'm so excited. And yeah, I think like the ideas of like humanity and what does it mean to be human? Because the whole idea of the puppet master is the puppet master has a ghost, it has a human consciousness, but it shouldn't. It is completely manufactured. The puppet master is a program, but it doesn't appear as a program. It appears as a ghost because it is a consciousness that like created itself. It just obtained so much information that it gained like self-awareness and sentience. And so it's basically like, hey, I'm this thing that's never really been seen, and I'm so interested in you, Kusanagi. I want us to merge to create something that the world hasn't seen yet, something that's brand new. The puppet master is basically like, the two things I can't achieve that a human can is death and reproduction. And by merging, we will be able to create, and in doing that, I will be able to achieve death. And I just think that's really freaking cool. Kind of what I said before, I like that this movie presents questions and presents information, and it gives its opinion. Like, I don't think it's terribly fond of the world it's in. I think it recognizes that this world is dark and almost grimy in a way, and I think it has an opinion that, like, hey, maybe this much technology isn't good for humanity, but I don't think it's forcing the viewer to agree with it.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. I think it's presenting this idea of like going to the extremes of if it's the capitalist kind of business or government that is pushing at these advancements, what are they doing that for? Right? And this idea, and so in so many aspects of life, even now, and especially for women, one's own body is not considered their own by so many of these institutions or powerful bodies. And, you know, those people in power feel like they get to control or choose how someone's body is used. So obviously women and reproductive rights is the first thing that comes to mind in today's world. Then you can even go as far as looking at like a war or something,
right,
like where people treat others as expendable or as a resource. And so, yeah, I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
Now, reminder, this movie came out 30 years ago, right? And it's
1995.
Couldn't be more relevant or, you know, thought-provoking than it could be today when we are seeing AI and all these different things pop up.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about the technical stuff because I feel like this ties into it. Like the score does a great job of being like kind of melancholy. It's a little eerie.
Very
but
cool.
I also find it hopeful.
Sure.
Which I think is similar to like the ending. Like the ending's kind of creepy. Kusanagi is now in this different body that is kind of a vaguely creepy looking body. It's a little unsettling. You're not quite sure where you stand, but it still feels hopeful to me, which I love.
Yeah. I was just going to say real quick, my favorite part of the movie is kind of the build up to the climax almost. It's kind of it's almost like a break in between the second act and the third act where they're all kind of preparing to, the puppet master is broken out and they're all preparing to like go track him down. And it's just this music and it's just like watching everybody get ready to go out and get him. And it's a very, very cool scene. The music's amazing. It's very stylized. It does kind of let you sit back and just kind of catch up to where you are in that moment. And
I love all the characters too. I like, they're relatable. They feel sympathetic to me. Like obviously it's a badass woman. So Kusanagi shows up at the beginning and I'm like, yes, we're here for it.
Right.
But like, I think Bato is such an interesting character. Like he's this hulking brute of a man who's very sensitive. The thing that I keep noticing is every time Kusanagi basically gets naked to use her thermo-optic camouflage thing.
That's why she gets naked, is to turn invisible? Okay.
Yes. He always covers her with her jacket afterwards. Even when her body is like mutilated and she's talking with the puppet master, he doesn't cover the puppet master, but he covers Kusanagi. He is very concerned with almost like protecting Kusanagi's body and her dignity. And I think that's a beautiful thing. But then the last thing I want to talk about, the background visuals. The urban background animation. Like, there were several times I paused it and like my girlfriend was doing something else and I was like, look at it. It's so beautiful. Look, that's all hand drawn. And she was like, yeah, I know what animation is. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Japanese doesn't always excel in character design. I think the character design in this one is quite good, but those urban backgrounds, man.
Yeah, no, they're fantastic.
So
it does
good.
Look great. It does give you a good future grimy tech city. It's great.
Anyway, we'll go to star ratings in a minute. Now that I've gushed about this film for a while, but did you have anything you wanted to add?
I don't think so. I think you hit really well on the ideas, the kind of theme throughout all of these movies about who are people really? Are they really understanding their true self? What does it mean to be your true self? What does it mean to be human? And just kind of giving space to explore some of those things. And yeah, great way to do it through all three of these movies.
Yeah, I think that, like we said, The Matrix is really a good time. I think it's definitely a crowd pleaser. I saw the TV glow. I think it's going to hit some people really, really well. Some people maybe not so much. And I think I feel similar to Ghost in the Shell. I adore this movie. So yeah, I think this movie is beautiful. I think there's a lot to it. I have consumed so many video essays about this movie because I think there's a lot of really cool biblical and like philosophical symbolism. I see what you're saying. Not everyone's gonna love this movie. It's a lot to digest the first time. Like it's 82 minutes too. Like, it is not a long film, but it packs a lot with what's in it. But right. So the whole point of arts is to expose people to things that they may not have noticed before. So, I would say if you liked The Matrix, I don't know that I'd essentially say either of these movies are essential watching if you like The Matrix, especially if you just like The Matrix as an action film. I would say if you liked some of the philosophy of The Matrix, then I think you could get on board with either Ghost in the Shell or I Saw the TV Glow, kind of depending on what you want to go with. I think Ghost in the Shell delves a lot more into philosophy and the symbolism, and I think I Saw the TV Glow delves a lot more into kind of digital media and nostalgia. So I don't know, I would say, because like with Little Mermaid, I was like, if you like Little Mermaid, yeah, I would give Ponyo a shot. With this one, I would say if you like aspects of The Matrix, I could recommend either one of these movies to you. If you like The Matrix because it's just an awesome action movie, I don't know if either of these are going to be your cup of tea.
I agree with that. I think it's good anytime to expose yourself to something new and different ideas. Yeah. But I think you're right. If you love The Matrix because of action, you're not getting the same thing out of these two, except for Ghost in the Shell a little bit.
Ghost in the Shell has some of it, yeah.
You got a suitcase gun that's pretty cool, similar to some Matrix type big guns and that stuff. So my star rating for Ghost in the Shell is 3.5 right now. Could go up in the future, but I'm just gonna go 3.5. I enjoyed aspects of it, but not my favorite thing in the world, but still good.
It's a 5-star movie for me.
And that's perfect.
Like 100%. It's one of those things that a lot of my friends are having around. For me, I'm like, I think objectively it's a masterpiece. I also just love the heck out of it, and that does tip things slightly in my favor as well.
Yeah, no.
But all right, so I think after this one, we're going to be going back to Star Wars. So I need to watch season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian. Because this one's coming out after the One Battle After Another episode.
Right. No, I know that.
Is that correct? Are we doing Star Wars?
I think so, yeah.
I assumed that was next on the docket. So, seasons 1 and 2 in The Mandalorian, if you want to follow along with us, I'm sure I will have so many opinions. I have high hopes for this one, though. I've had a lot of people say, like, hey, don't worry, this will restore your faith after the sequel trilogy ruined everything. Stick with it. I've heard The Mandalorian is good, so I'm excited. And we'll get into season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian next time.
Yeah, I've already rewatched episode 1 and happy to say it still holds up. So excited for you.
Good. I'm excited. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Good place to be.
Awesome. Well, we will catch you guys next time.
See you later.